Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you've enjoyed these sessions today. I'd like to invite Pat Hermans and Luke Naeem from our global SA partner, Slalom, who specialise in working with ISVs, helping them modernise their applications and operations as part of our Windows and SaaS Modernization specialty competency partners. I'm just going to ask them to talk a little bit about some recent work they've been doing with Covermore, and with them they also have Neil Maclure, the Head of Infrastructure and Group Technology Services at Covermore, to talk a little bit about their journey. Gents, thank you for being here and sharing your experiences at this event. Before we get started, can I ask you to introduce yourselves, a little bit of a background in your respective organisations and roles there. Neil, can we start with yourself, if that's okay?
Absolutely. Thank you, Clayton. Clayton, my name is Neil Maclure. I look after basically infrastructure and cloud services along with technology services for Covermore. And as I think everybody knows or is well known, for over 30 years now, Covermore has been associated with both travel insurance and medical assistance. And our team's been an enabler, and we've been protecting the travel dreams of Australians traveling both domestically and internationally. So again, 15 million users, 15 million travelers worldwide. Basically, we have now in our collective databases that we service. We operate both under our own brand, Covermore. Alongside with that, we have other brands like Blue and Halo and so on in multiple geographies as well. Personally, I joined Covermore in June last year, just when the pandemic was beginning to hit the travel industry. So we've had some interesting learnings, and our journey's been quite unique as well, which I'd like to share in the next couple of minutes. In my role, I look after the group infrastructure, cloud technology services, as I mentioned. And just to close it off, we recently worked with Slalom and AWS to build out a brand new stack in EMEA to support our growth. And that's been an interesting and fantastic journey for us.
On the topic of Slalom, it's a name I've known for many years in many of our case studies, Luke. But could you, for the people listening, provide us a bit of a background of yourself and your operations around AWS?
Thanks, Clay. Pleasure to be here alongside yourself and Neil, and thank you for bringing us in. So Slalom is a global modern consulting company focused on technology, strategy, and business transformation. Our heritage goes back 25 years, back in Seattle, where we were born, and we operate in more than 35 markets across the globe. Majority of them in North America, Canada, UK. We've got offices in London and Manchester, and more recently in Jan 2020, we opened up shop down under in Melbourne and Sydney, and Tokyo launched earlier this year. I think the best way to kind of explain, why Slalom exists and what we do and how we do is we bring in the tier one capability of a management consulting company that a Big Four would bring to the table, but we also bring the agility and the leanness of what a modern product engineering organization would bring to the table to kind of help accelerate product delivery. We work quite closely with AWS across the world, being the largest AWS partner globally. We've got the SaaS competency, and we work with all types of customers across the world, helping them modernize their applications and the architectures and move away from traditional monolithic applications and data centers. And just to give you the insight into the size and the names of customers that we work with, we work with New Relic, Atlassian, CoreLogic, Anaplan, and more recently Covermore in Australia. And pleasure to introduce Pat Hermans from our software engineering capability.
Hi, Pat. Thanks for joining today. Yeah, I can recall many case studies from the early days, my time at AWS with Slalom's logos, in particular ISVs that you've helped on their journeys. We definitely see that working with ISVs here, the opportunity to expand and capture new markets, and that really relates in the story with Covermore. I think that was an interesting part to me, and we'll get to that. Before we get into some of the business drivers, Neil, being a .NET shop, you decided to go with AWS. Can you elaborate on some of the key decision factors in your selection?
Absolutely, Clay. I think it's best to start with, from a tooling perspective, how do we use our tooling? So that gives the team, the audience, a bit of an understanding where we're coming from. So for our CI/CD pipeline, we use TeamCity and Octopus Deploy and Packer for all our AMI automation specifically. Our core policy system, we call Penguin, which is a suite of .NET applications, basically. It's bundled together as a .NET applications. The entire stack, the Penguin stack, is made up of PowerShell scripts and CloudFormation templates as well. That's pretty much how it's kind of hung together. From an AMS, we use AMS to provide a lightweight ITOM model, which reduces our enabling and reduces our operations and enables, I suppose, expansion as well. So broadly, from a tooling perspective, that's how it kind of hangs together. From I suppose top of mind when we engaged with Xylem and AWS was, okay, if we're going to do this, we need to be very mindful of that we don't want to make any changes to our actual code base, and we want to avoid any kind of disruptions to further releases for our developers, etc., because that complicates the entire background. Now, the work that we've completed within EMEA with the team effectively enables our developers to completely automate the entire build of our application stack and to be able to redeploy them across multiple environments and multiple geographies. So that's where the benefit basically kicked in for us. And some of the business drivers that we have that basically got us to seriously consider this was time to market. I remember walking into Covermore, my first day in Covermore. I walked straight into a boardroom where we were responding to an MVP for Bookings.com, and we were given a timeline, and the timeline was a very sharp timeline. I remember thinking, "Oh gosh, how are we going to service that?" And straight away jumped on talking to AWS and Xylem, and basically they said, "Okay, let's mobilize trucks here." So time to market absolutely was critical for us. We had to be able to go global. We needed to be able to scale rapidly. These were some of the key MVP requirements that we had. And of course, tying all that together is we wanted to be able to have a repeatable progress or a repeatable process that talked to our target operating model. And working with Xylem and AWS gave us that scalability. It gave us the time to market. It gave us the global, I suppose, footprint that we needed.
So, I mean, we often call this approach a lift and shape, where you can sort of rapidly migrate workloads in and then continue to refactor and improve them down the line in whether it's adopting of microservices or whatnot. The interesting part here is you've incorporated that with your existing tool chain, but included AMS. Pat, can you talk through some of the details, or what was involved in sort of keeping the existing process, but sort of extending that operations aspect and deployment models?
Okay, so for me, it was Neil's already mentioned it. It was about making sure that the AWS expansion into EMEA for Covermore was not impactful to the existing development processes, because we didn't want to impact the existing processes and procedures that Covermore was following. It was a very short timeline, but it was a very focused deployment as well into a brand new region. And Covermore chose to enable AMS, so AWS Managed Services, on this new account and all this new infrastructure. So it was a matter of extending their existing software development processes through TeamCity and Octopus Deploy, like Neil already mentioned, and utilizing PowerShell and leveraging the bootstrapping of new instances to make this new IAC-driven deployment just hook into their existing software development lifecycle.
Can you talk about like the release and deployment process in terms of change management into production for these applications?
Yeah, so from my recollection, Covermore was using a combination of a blue-green deployment mechanism into a production environment, and they had a combination of pre-production environments, various different testing environments that needed to be stood up and on request. So the main mechanism that we used were hooks from Octopus Deploy into bootstrapping in PowerShell, so the developers could stand up an environment or could request a new environment by AMS, and that new environment would report back to Octopus Deploy and let it know that it was ready for a new deployment. That deployment would then be kicked off using the existing patterns and templates and processes and steps that they had in Octopus Deploy, and deploy the modularized monolith or the packaged .NET applications onto this new instance in this new environment as and when required.
So this work sounds like a really strong fit for some of Slalom's build or software development engineering capabilities with sort of DevOps mixed in. How did you sort of work and determine how to team with Covermore on this and assist them?
I was just going to sort of very quickly jump in there and say, typically the way we would drive cultural change and engage with our customers is through the Dev Accelerator program. The idea is to kind of help our customers identify the workload they want to modernize and move it to the cloud, and embed our team and take our customers' teams on a bit of a journey and work alongside them rather than for them. It's very much a player-coach kind of relationship that we like to maintain with our customers. And the idea is, at the end of it, our customers are able to kind of become self-sufficient. Typically, the way we would run that program is an 8-week module where we kind of help our customers not only move the application effectively to the cloud, but we also encourage them to explore what is that next workload or challenge that you want to take, where we can kind of support you in the background and give you that confidence whilst you're actually making the transition and modernizing your infrastructure and your applications. And hopefully, on the third attempt, they become self-sufficient and they can continue that journey, and they've got a repeatable process and a pattern that they can utilize and reuse.
Yeah, no, DevX Motion is definitely a really good way for enabling teams with new technology. Neil, are you continuing to iterate on this workload now that it's deployed and operational and has all the underpinnings for continuous delivery? What does the roadmap for this asset look like now? What elements are your team working on and extending and improving?
Well, top of mind from a roadmap type of an approach is we want to be able to take a staggered approach to we've got a roadmap, we want to stagger this. And our first, I suppose, the first cab of rank is we want to be able to complete the automation from build to code deployment end to end. We want to automate that entire section of it. We want to break down the application components with the use of elastic container services, Lambda functions, API gateways. This is where we want to be able to get to. And lastly, we want to move towards a cloud agnostic strategy with the use of Terraform, Packer, TeamCity, and Kubernetes. That's our end game, and we're looking to achieve that in the next in the next 3 years. Hopefully, if all the stars align.
Awesome. And gents, what would future or today's self tell past self? For those beginning on a journey like this, are there any expert tips that you would either of you sort of share that you think were things that worked incredibly well, or things you would have done earlier in the journey?
For me, I think if anyone is looking to kind of embark on their journey, engage AWS and a reliable engineering partner like us early on, so we can kind of help you with some best practices and what's worked in the past, what hasn't worked in the past, and help you with the gotchas that you need to be aware of. Pat, anything?
Yeah, I think there are two big takeaways from this for me. One is that you don't need to completely rip out or change any of your infrastructure to add the extensibility of a new AWS region or a new AWS account. Finding ways to factor that into your existing process was actually relatively straightforward. And for me personally, AMS is nothing to be scared of. Yes, it's more hoops initially, but it worked out really well. And I think that Neil can talk to the fact that the benefits outweigh that initial investment over a relatively short period.
100% agree with that statement there. And from our perspective, what was key, or some of the key learnings were, engage your teams up front, engage a good partner, a set of partners. In this case, it was AWS and Asylum. That's, looking back, that was probably one of our $1 million sort of, big ticks that we can put aside. So get the right teams engaged right up front, partner with the right, entities. Very critical for this program, for any program of work of this nature. Secondly, have a clear understanding of what your journey is going to be, the approach, whether it be lift or shift, or you're going to do a partial refactor, a full refactor. have some kind of understanding, or at least the business needs to work with its partners to get that understanding up front. And the other aspect is commence your solutioning workshops, especially not having one team in one workshop type of an approach, but have, look at it from different lens. Have multiple teams. What I mean by that is multiple points of view, engineering teams, infra teams, architectural teams, all looking at the same solution from a different, from their lenses. Get that kicked off up front as well. And lastly, I'd say, proof of concept. Do your POCs quick. Do it fast. Do it fast. And if you fail early, and reiterate as you go. So these are some of the learnings looking back. I would say, is really key to our journey going forward as well.
Gents, we're out of time. I would love to continue to hear more about the Covermore journey and story further. I must thank you all for coming and participating in this session and sharing those insights. There's some really good insights for others that may be considering the same journey themselves.
Thank you, Clay, and thank you, team.